Aida for not wanting to split my inheritance with my step-siblings. I, 25F, lost my father after a long battle with cancer. It's been an incredibly hard time for me as my dad and I were always really close. I was his only child and he raised me by himself after my mom passed away when I was young. We had this deep bond and losing him has been devastating. When my dad remarried 7 years ago, I was happy for him. He found love again with my stepmom, Karen, 40F, who had 2 kids of her own, Jake, 19M, and Emily, 16F. I tried to get along with them, even though I was already in college when they came into the picture. My dad and Karen seemed happy and I wanted to support that. My relationship with Karen was always fine, cordial, but we never got that close. As for Jake and Emily, we didn't have much of a sibling bond. They were nice enough, but we lived different lives, and there was never a real connection beyond polite family gatherings. After my dad passed away, I learned that he left me a significant inheritance. He had a will, and in it he explicitly left everything to me, his house, his savings, and some investments. He'd worked hard his whole life, and I think he wanted to make sure I was financially secure. I wasn't surprised by this because we had talked about it before, and he made it clear that he wanted me to have everything. My dad's estate wasn't enormous, but it was enough to ensure I could live comfortably, pay off my student loans, and even think about buying my own home one day. Here's where things get messy. When Karen found out about the will, she was shocked. She said she assumed that my dad's estate would be divided between me, Jake, and Emily, since we were all part of the family now. Jake and Emily both came to me soon after and said they thought it would be fair if we split everything equally, like real siblings. I was blindsided by this. My dad's will was clear, he left everything to me. There wasn't a mention of splitting anything with Jake and Emily, and I know that's what my dad wanted. He never treated them badly, but he always made it clear that I was his only child, and this inheritance was his way of providing for me after he was gone. He wasn't especially close with Jake and Emily, and I think he saw them as Corinne's responsibility, not his. When I told them I didn't want to split the inheritance, all hell broke loose. Corinne said I was being selfish and accused me of trying to cut her and her kids out of the family. Jake and Emily both started sending me texts about how family means sharing, and that I was disrespecting my dad's memory by not including them in the inheritance. I felt like I was being ganged up on, and it hurt because I just wanted to honor what my dad wanted. I tried to explain that this was my dad's decision, not mine, and that it wasn't about money. It was about following his wishes. But Corinne kept pushing, saying that her kids deserved a part of the estate because my dad had been a father figure to them too. She said they were struggling financially and that it would be the right thing to do for me to share what I had inherited. But here's the thing, I don't feel like I owe them anything. My dad wasn't their father. He was my father and he worked hard to build this life for us. He made his choice and I feel like it's not fair for them to pressure me to go against his wishes. Now my relationship with Corinne and my step-siblings is completely shattered. They've been calling me greedy and selfish, and Corinne even said that my dad would be disappointed in me for not sharing. It's gotten to the point where I'm considering cutting off all contact with them, but part of me feels guilty. Am I wrong for wanting to keep the inheritance that my dad left for me? Am I the asshole for not wanting to split it with my step-siblings? Update 1, well, things have gone from bad to worse. After reading some of the responses to my original post, I decided to sit down with Corinne, Jake, and Emily one last time to try to explain my side of things. I thought that if we could have a civil conversation, maybe we could reach some kind of understanding. I wasn't expecting a miracle, but I hoped they might at least see where I was coming from. We met at Corinne's house, and right from the start, the tension was thick. Corinne was cold, barely acknowledging me when I walked in. Jake and Emily sat on the couch, arms crossed, looking like they had already made up their minds. I took a deep breath and tried to explain that this wasn't about greed or selfishness. I told them that my dad's will was clear and I was simply trying to honor his wishes. I reminded them that my dad had worked hard his whole life to provide for me, and this was his way of ensuring I had security after he was gone. Before I could even finish, Corinne interrupted me. She said something that completely floored me. Well, if your dad had known I was pregnant with his child before he died, maybe things would have been different. I was stunned. Pregnant? I had no idea what she was talking about. She went on to say that she had found out she was pregnant just a few weeks before my dad passed away, but she hadn't told anyone yet because she wanted to be sure. She was claiming that she was carrying my dad's child and that this new baby deserved a share of the inheritance too. I felt like the room was spinning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad was gone, and now suddenly Corinne was claiming to be pregnant with his child? It felt like a manipulation, like she was trying to use this situation to guilt me into giving up a portion of the inheritance. I didn't know what to say. Jake and Emily jumped in, saying that if their mom was telling the truth, then there was even more reason for me to share the estate. They started talking about how family sticks together and how this baby would be their sibling too. So it would only be fair to include them all in the inheritance. I didn't know what to believe. Was Karen really pregnant? Was she telling the truth, or was this some twisted ploy to pressure me into giving in? I didn't want to accuse her of lying, but the timing just fell off. I told them I needed time to think and left the house in a daze. I'm more confused than ever now. If Karen is pregnant, does that change everything? Should I be considering the needs of this potential new sibling? Or is this just another attempt to manipulate me into splitting the inheritance? Update 2. A lot has happened since my last update, and things have taken a dramatic turn. First of all, Corinne is indeed pregnant. She showed me the ultrasound pictures as proof, and I can't deny that it's real. She's about 3 months along now, and it's clear that she's carrying my dad's child. I was shocked when I saw the evidence, and for a brief moment I felt guilty for doubting her. But that guilt didn't last long. After confirming the pregnancy, Karen and my step-siblings immediately pushed harder for me to split the inheritance. They were relentless. Corinne started talking about how she needed the money to provide for the baby and how it was only fair for my dad's unborn child to receive a share of his estate. Jake and Emily were even more vocal, accusing me of being heartless and selfish for not immediately agreeing to their demands. It became too much. I was overwhelmed and didn't know what to do, so I decided to speak with a lawyer. I explained the situation to my attorney, and after reviewing my dad's will, she gave me some shocking news. Because my dad's will was clear and written before Corinne's pregnancy, there was no legal obligation for me to share the inheritance with the unborn child or my step-siblings. Legally, everything belonged to me, and unless I chose to give them a share, they had no claim to it. Hearing that brought me some relief, but it didn't make the emotional side of things any easier. Corinne was still pressuring me, and my step-siblings were becoming increasingly hostile. They started posting vague things on social media, making me look like the villain, and I even started getting messages from extended family members who had heard Corinne's side of the story. Everyone seemed to think I was the bad guy for not sharing the inheritance with my new sibling. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. The constant pressure and guilt-tripping were wearing me down, so I made a difficult decision. I cut off contact with Karen, Jake, and Emily. I blocked them on social media, changed my number, told them I wouldn't be discussing the inheritance directly with them, and have contacted a lawyer. I am sorry for ending the update here. Believe me, I wish I could say things ended here, but I have a very long legal process ahead of me. Final update a year later. It's been a while since my last post, and I know many of you have been wondering what happened. I didn't want to update until everything was resolved, but now I can finally share the full story. Buckle up, because it's been a wild ride. After I said I'd be contacting a lawyer, I went through with it. I hired a great attorney to handle the legal mess Corinne had dragged me into. I was ready for a long, drawn-out battle over the inheritance and, of course, the situation with her unborn child. But things took a turn I never could have seen coming. About 3 months into the legal proceedings, my lawyer received some unexpected information from Corinne's legal team. Apparently, they had been keeping something from us that was about to blow the whole case wide open. Corinne had suffered a miscarriage. I was floored. I didn't know what to think. Corinne had never mentioned anything about it to me. She had continued to pressure me about the inheritance, acting as though her pregnancy was still progressing. For months, she allowed me to believe that I was fighting her on this because of the unborn child's right to a share of my father's estate, when in reality, that wasn't the case at all. She had kept the miscarriage hidden and continued using the pregnancy as leverage in the legal battle. At first, I felt a strange mixture of shock and guilt. Miscarriages are devastating, and despite everything that had happened between us, I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Corinne had used her pregnancy first to emotionally manipulate me into sharing the inheritance. And then, even after the tragedy of her miscarriage, she kept it going, trying to use her grief to strong-arm me into giving her a portion of my father's estate. I confronted her directly. I wasn't sure what kind of reaction I'd get, but I needed answers. When I asked why she hadn't told me about the miscarriage, Karen broke down. She admitted that she'd been afraid of losing her financial security after the baby was no longer a factor in the case. She said she'd been under intense stress with her finances, and she saw the inheritance as the only way out. That's why she had continued with the lawsuit, hoping I would eventually give in or that the court would side with her. I was speechless. This woman, my stepmother, had not only hidden something so tragic from me, but had tried to use it to manipulate me for her own gain. It felt like a final betrayal. After our confrontation, Corinne dropped the lawsuit. She didn't have any legal standing to continue, and she knew it. But that wasn't the end of the story. I needed closure, not just with Corinne, but with my dad's memory and the life I had been thrown into since his death. I decided to sell my dad's house. It was too full of painful memories, too tied up in the chaos of the past year. Selling it felt like the only way to truly move on. I used part of the money from the sale to pay off my remaining student loans and put the rest into savings and investments, just like my dad would have wanted. As for Corinne, I cut off all contact with her and my step-siblings. I knew there was no going back after everything that had happened. They had shown me their true colors, and I realized that I didn't need that kind of toxicity in my life. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary for my own peace of mind. Now, a year later, I'm finally at peace. I've moved into a new apartment, started dating again, and focused on building the kind of life my dad would have been proud of. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set you free. I'll always miss my dad, but I know he's with me in spirit. And as for Corinne, Jake, and Emily, I wish them no ill will, but I'm done letting them take up space in my life. This chapter is officially closed. Thanks, Reddit, for being there through all of this. Your advice and support helped me navigate one of the toughest years of my life, and I'm forever grateful.